I'm not here to push you into getting clean because it's not going to work if you're not ready. Just let me know if you're not ready. Cool?
I don't know if it's all that, just it's a lot of complicated stuff, you know?
Life is pretty complicated, but that's the real world, my friend.
Here in Everett, it's just everywhere.
Like, this is some real shit out here. This is not a joke, you know?
It's everywhere. The epidemic is in every state, and it's blanketed.
It's really easier to find, so it's here around this town, it's everywhere.
People that you normally wouldn't think that would be involved in it are involved in it.
You know, everyone pictures, junkies that come out from under a bridge with a needle hanging out their arm, they're all skinny. No, it's doctors, it's lawyers, it's judges, cops, business people.
Everett Washington sits just 25 miles from Seattle with a population of over 100,000. But amid the postcard imagery of evergreens and snow-capped mountains is a town that has slowly been eaten away by opioid addiction.
I mean, we saw just this increasing number of people on the street. Our paramedics in the emergency rooms were treating more and more people. It just seemed like an incredibly increasing rate. It just didn't seem normal.
But Everett isn't the only small town being eaten away by addiction and overdoses. As the opioid crisis gets worse, the public is becoming more familiar with what an overdose looks like. Locals take to Facebook Live to stream people turning blue in the middle of parking lots. Police departments post photos to show that those who use aren't the only ones affected. The New York Times reports drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under 50. In 2016, roughly 64,000 people died in the US from drug overdoses. That's more than the total number of deaths in the Vietnam and Iraq wars combined. We traveled to Everett to see what the city's been doing to help people struggling with drug use.
So my name's Caitlin Dowd. I am a social worker with the Everett Police Department. My role is to pretty much sit shotgun and ride around with our officer looking for individuals who are experiencing homelessness, suffering from mental health issues or chemical dependency issues, and work on getting them into the appropriate services. We usually just drive around the city, respond to referrals from our fellow officers, and other referrals from community members. Other clients will refer their friends and things like that, so we're working really hard to get people into the services that will help them get on the right path again.
Oh, really? I'm sorry to hear that. You got the flu or something?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a bummer.
You guys had asked if, how are you feeling? He's like, oh, I have the flu. But the officers and yourself most likely said that it was
Most likely dope sick.
Hi. No? Is there anything of your complications that you're dealing with that maybe we might be able to give you a hand with?
All right, well, do you still have my card?
Yep.
Okay.
The phone number on it still works.
It does. I'll respond to a call or a text, I promise.
I get that there's probably a lot of stuff we can do for you, but we would really like to help you out.
Snohomish County is 10% of the state's population, but we have 20% of the overdose deaths. So about 1 in 5 of the overdose deaths in Washington happened in Snohomish County.
The city is suing OxyContin distributor Purdue Pharma for millions, claiming the company failed to properly notify authorities about their drug's illegal distribution into the black market. The lawsuit also accuses Purdue of, quote, knowingly, recklessly, and/or negligently supplying OxyContin to obviously suspicious physicians and pharmacies. Purdue denied these allegations and deferred us to a statement on their website. We are deeply troubled by the abuse and misuse of our medication. This lawsuit paints a completely flawed and inaccurate portrayal of events that led to the crisis in Everett, Washington. Mayor Ray Stephenson, who has served Everett since 2003, is the longest-serving mayor the city has ever seen. He says that Purdue knew their product was falling into the wrong hands, but turned a blind eye to it.
It wasn't an easy decision to say our community has a problem. Shame to say, my first response is if I could have chartered a few buses and put them all on the bus and gotten them out of our community, that probably would have been the most immediate fix that I could see. I think when you come to the realization that these people are our friends and our neighbors, it really sort of begins to change your mindset.
As he transformed his understanding, he began to see that we need to reach out to those who are suffering with empathy, with support, with outreach. We also need to go after those people who prey on those who are vulnerable, those who are living on our street. And that includes people who are dealing street drugs, and it also includes corporations who are dealing prescription drugs or allowing it to be flood into the black market.
Much of that empathy, support, and outreach begins with the Everett Police Department's COET team, a task force made up of police officers and social workers who offer avenues of recovery to addicts who might be homeless. COET, which stands for Community Outreach Enforcement Team, finds people who are struggling with addiction camped out in various parts of the city, like wooded areas, parks, and overpasses.
So you definitely have to make sure to watch where you're stepping, from feces to needles to any sort of thing that can be used as a weapon.
Sometimes you'll find little booby traps that get set up, whether that's intended for us or other people. Like we were telling you, hatchets and things like this that somebody could use as a weapon, so.
Got a huge increase in homelessness in our parks, in people that are camped out in our parks. We're finding lots of drug paraphernalia left behind, caps from needles and the needles themselves.
Lots of trash, lots of clothes that have been donated or stolen or whatever the case might be.
Our goal is to get people connected to treatment and deal with their underlying issues to get them out of the criminal justice stream. And if that approach works, great. Look at it as another method of crime prevention. But if people choose not to take advantage of the services that we're trying to offer and they're still committing crimes and victimizing people, well then we still have the enforcement side to take care of that issue.
It's not just that you're making these relationships with people, getting them into their housing, and then, okay, well, we're done. You have to keep in contact with people. You have to keep the follow-up, because that's just as important, because it doesn't do any good to get somebody housed and then 2 months later they're back on the street again.
But if we can save 1 and then 10 and then 50, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
Roger, a veteran, reached out to COET for help with getting off heroin. Like many others struggling, Roger began with opioids. When those ran out and became too expensive, he turned to the cheaper alternative, heroin.
A friend of mine had a prescription for oxys and didn't use it, so he gave them to me, and so I started using those, and then when they quit making them, I had to find something, so I switched over to heroin. It's real similar, it keeps me well.
Getting sick wasn't an option, and that's what made me start going to heroin, is because I couldn't keep up with the money and I couldn't keep up with the pill habit. So the heroin was the next best thing, and it was really cheap.
It's like your skin is crawling and then your mind is being like flooded with everything. It's like the worst thing ever. You just don't want to be sick. You'll do anything to not be sick, so.
We are a blue-collar town, and somebody described it to me one time as sort of a small southern town in disguise. We were, just an everyday town where people worked hard, and I believe the community is so invested in what we're doing to help the people on the streets and to stand up for ourselves against a big pharmaceutical company who's really created tremendous damage in this community. They're behind us.
Come November, Everett will have a new mayor. After 14 years, Stephenson has chosen not to run for re-election. He hopes the incoming mayor continues the fight against Purdue Pharma and sees the lawsuit through.
My urging to whoever's elected next is you need to continue the efforts to help people on the streets, because helping them will help our collective quality of life. This is the right thing to do to really have a positive impact for many communities across this country in the years to come.